This is Today as It Happened. Good Wednesday evening. I'm Holly Furfer, guiding you through our timeline of the day's most important news. From the looming deadline for the federal government to release the so-called Epstein files to the ongoing fallout of the deadly Brown University shooting. But first, we started the morning with a preview of President Donald Trump's primetime address Wednesday night. Joe, let's talk about that scheduled address tonight to the nation. Do we know what he's expected to talk about besides perhaps these Venezuelan boat strikes?
Well, officially, the White House press secretary, in previewing what the president will say, said the president will talk about the past year, all of his accomplishments in year one, and he will preview the next 3 years. And it has been a whirlwind of a year, right? I mean, nobody can dispute that, whether you're talking tariffs and trade, whether you're talking what the president passed or didn't pass in Congress, all of the global affairs and issues from the Middle East to Eastern Europe and Russia and now to Venezuela. But remember, this is also an opportunity, a rare opportunity, and these opportunities don't pop up every single week for the president to speak in prime time, an opportunity to speak to really doubtful Americans right now. I mean, I'm looking at new polling from Marist, NPR, and PBS out this morning. 36% of the country say that they approve of his handling of the economy. This is what President Trump was known for, right? And during his first term, they may not have liked his social media posts, his rhetoric, but they liked the economy. And yet we have more data points in this morning that show Americans are really struggling. North of 50% of those surveyed in this Marist poll think the U.S. is in a recession right now. Now, Wall Street's not telling you that, but Americans feel it. Affordability is a big issue. On Capitol Hill a little bit later this morning, we're expecting a vote on health care reforms in the House of Representatives. It does not include Affordable Care Act subsidies that are expiring at the end of this month, just days away. Health care premiums spiking for millions of Americans starting on January 1. This is an issue. But so the White House has an opportunity here. And what we've already kind of seen from the president, and when he spoke in Pennsylvania in recent days about the economy, about affordability, he said things are going to get better. He believes that one big beautiful bill which passed earlier this year, the tax incentives for seniors and no taxes on tips for service workers and bigger standard deductions here and there, that is stuff that people will start feeling early next year when they start filing their taxes. He's asking them to give them some time. Gas prices under $3. People will be driving for the holidays under $3 a gallon in north of 3 dozen states in the country this morning. That's a metric that the White House is proud of. They're proud of Wall Street. The president talks about it a lot. Problem is, not a lot of people pay attention to stocks each and every day. A lot of people don't play the markets like the wealthiest in our country. So there are metrics that the White House wants to brag about. I fully expect the president to talk about those metrics and more during this primetime address tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time.
All right, we will see in just about, 11 hours from now. Scripps News Deputy Political Director Joe St. George for us. Thanks as always, Joe. Now let's take a quick look at some of the other major headlines from today. Nearly 300,000 people are still dealing with no power in Washington and Oregon after days of flooding and levee failures. This drone video captures extensive flooding in the city of Pacific, and officials say multiple levees around the White River broke, leaving entire neighborhoods submerged. And take a look at this. The King County Sheriff's Office released aerial video showing the rescue of a driver who had to climb on the roof of his car after getting stuck in high waters. So far, at least one person has died amid these flash floods. The measles outbreak is growing across the country. In South Carolina, hundreds of people, including children, are actually in quarantine, some for the second time since the outbreak began in October. In Arizona and Utah, more than 200 people have been sickened by the virus. Nationally, the measles case count is nearly 2,000. Cases have mostly spread among people who are unvaccinated. Blue Origin is preparing to launch the first ever wheelchair user to space. Tomorrow, the aerospace company's rocket will carry Michaela Benthouse, the first wheelchair-using astronaut, along with 5 other passengers on an 11-minute flight from West Texas. The upcoming launch would be Blue Origin's first human spaceflight in more than 2 months, and 6th since the company made headlines in April when pop star Katy Perry and broadcast journalist Gayle King joined 4 others on an all-woman spaceflight. Coming up on Today As It Happened.
Today, Mr. Speaker, I can announce that we're issuing a licence to transfer £2.5 billion from the sale of Chelsea Football Club. That's been frozen, those funds, since 2022.
And later.
This is a devastating tragedy that has befallen the Reiner family. We all recognize that. Our hearts go out to the entire Reiner family.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. Let's return to our briefing of the day's top stories.
The British government is giving a Russian billionaire one last chance to hand over more than $3 billion in promised monies for Ukraine's war victims. Roman Abramovich was forced to sell the Chelsea Soccer Club in 2022 after he was sanctioned for his ties to Vladimir Putin. He pledged to give that money from the sale to war victims and a charity, but he has yet to follow through.
Today, Mr. Speaker, I can announce that we're issuing a licence to transfer £2.5 billion from the sale of Chelsea Football Club. That's been frozen, those funds, since 2022. My message to Abramovich is this: the clock is ticking. Honour the commitment that you made and pay up now. And if you don't, we're prepared to go to court so every penny reaches those whose lives have been torn apart by Putin's illegal war.
Scripps News International correspondent Stuart Smith is live for us in London with the details. And Stuart, Abramovich making that pledge more than 3 years ago. Is there any indication that he will comply with this deadline before the government is forced to take action?
Well, he's been firm throughout. The big point of disagreement here is that Roman Abramovich says that that money could go to humanitarian causes. He says he's okay with that, but that it should go to what he described as all victims of the war, which of course could include Russians, it could include Russian soldiers. Charities exist for them too, but the British government says that money should only go to humanitarian causes in Ukraine, and all of it should go there. So that's where we've been stuck for 3 years. He cannot move his money because it's sanctioned. He cannot spend the money because of those sanctions, but nor can the government force him to give it away. It's still his money. They've just frozen it. At least that's what we thought until this summer, when the government said actually not only has it frozen the money, but it believes it could use the legal system to force him to spend that money where the government believes it should go. And that was what the Prime Minister Keir Starmer was reiterating earlier. He's saying that Roman Abramovich must come to an agreement with the government to spend it on humanitarian causes in Ukraine, or they're going to take him to court. And he's got 90 days to change his mind while his legal bodies work in the background to try and come up with a solution that's acceptable to him and to London.
Stuart, where is the $3.25 billion right now?
So right now it's in London. It's stuck in Roman Abramovich's bank account, effectively, which is why the UK government controls what happens to it. But what it can't do is force him to sell it or use it in any particular way. And so with that, he, in a sense, has some power, and that's how he believes he can get away with negotiating with the British government. But the UK court system, according to the government, could be used to force him to spend it. And that's uncharted territory. There's nothing like this has happened before, so it's still not clear. And the Treasury here in London won't say what legal mechanism it believes it can use to force him to spend it, which is why this debate has gone on for so long. But the government clearly believes it can and has started, in effect, the firing gun on Wednesday.
Stuart, take us back. Explain why Abramovich was forced to sell the soccer club, the Chelsea Soccer Club, in the first place.
Yes, he had owned it for years and he had made a lot of money from it. But when he was sanctioned by the government due to his alleged close ties to Russian President Vladimir Putin, he wasn't able to keep ownership because it would have meant it impossible to manage the club. How, if you cannot move any of that money, can you, for example, pay for players, pay for business expenses? You can't do any of that. So the government actually issued him a special license that would allow him to sell the money. And that's when they came up with this initial agreement to use the funds for a humanitarian purpose. But that got no further than an agreement, which is why we are stuck where we are now.
Our international correspondent, Stuart Smith, for us live in London. Stuart, as always, we thank you very much. In this country, Nick Reiner is back in court today. He will be formally charged in connection with the stabbing deaths of his parents, filmmaker Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle. That case is sending shockwaves across Hollywood and, yes, nationwide. Court TV correspondent Cody Thomas is live outside the courthouse in Los Angeles. And Cody, what are you learning from today's hearing?
Well, good afternoon, Dell. It was a big day today because Nick Reiner was in court, but he waived his right to a speedy trial. Now, of course, he was in court joined by his high-profile defense attorney, Alan Jackson, who was actually the one who asked the judge for a continuance of this arraignment to January 7th of 2026. Now, we saw Nick Reiner sitting behind a glass panel in the courtroom, sitting behind his defense counsel. Again, that's high-profile defense attorney Alan Jackson, joined by defense attorney Elizabeth Little, a similar defense structure that we saw during that massive Karen Reed trial and retrial earlier this year. We weren't allowed to show Nick Reiner's face. It was a very short hearing. But let's walk back through some of these charges, Dell, because there are some pretty heavy charges. Of course, we know that Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle were stabbed to death. Nick Reiner now charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, according to the DA's office, risen to special circumstances because of the multiple murders. Now, DA Nathan Hochman said that the death penalty is still on the table. There has been no decision made regarding the death penalty just yet. Now, again, we know that Nick Reiner was found in a public area near Exposition Park, which is near the University of Southern California. And upon talking to some people out here in Los Angeles, that is evidently a very drug-influenced area with hard drugs like heroin and methamphetamine and things of that nature. And we've also heard a lot about this fight at Conan O'Brien's Los Angeles home Saturday night before the stabbings took place on Sunday, Dell. We've heard a lot about Nick Reiner and Rob Reiner getting into a very loud argument where Rob and Michelle left. We don't know exactly what that argument could have been about, but there's been speculation that it was about Nick Reiner refusing another cycle of drug treatment after a whopping 17 stints in rehab starting back in his early teen years, as early as 15. We know Nick has been very vocal about his struggles with addiction and homelessness starting in those early teen years. He went on to co-write a movie with his father, Rob Reiner, called Being Charlie, that was loosely based on his early life struggles. And Dell, in the last few minutes, we have gotten a statement from the Reiner family. They told TMZ, quote, "Words cannot even begin to describe the unimaginable pain we are experiencing every moment of the day. The horrific and devastating loss of our parents, Rob and Michelle Reiner, is something that no one should ever experience. They weren't just our parents, they were our best friends. We are grateful for the outpouring of condolences, kindness, and support we have received not only from family and friends, but people from all walks of life. We now ask for respect and privacy, for speculation to be tempered with compassion and humanity, and for our parents to be remembered for the incredible lives they lived and the love they gave." So, Dell, of course, lots of questions that still need answers, but Nick Reiner will be back in court for that arraignment on January 7th of next year. Now, his attorney, Alan Jackson, spoke to media after this court proceeding today, pretty much reiterating that this is a very complex case that needs to be looked at very thoroughly in order for justice to prevail. Dell?
Hey, Cody, on that attorney, Alan Jackson, he is a high-profile attorney, and that is to say the very least. He has represented Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey. How much of an impact will that have? And I'm really thinking about who's going to write the checks, because in one sense, he's half of the family. The other half of the family is going to be on the other side of the courtroom.
Well, yeah, Dell, that's a great point, especially about who is fronting this bill. Now, I'm sure that Alan Jackson will make a huge impact, because we saw the impact he made in that big Karen Reed trial. I mean, we broadcast that on the network at Court TV. We saw the trial and retrial where Karen Reed pretty much got off. She was accused of murder and all that. And then we see Kevin Spacey, Harvey Weinstein. Now, we don't know how Alan Jackson, he hasn't spoken on how he got attached to the case or how those high-profile legal fees are to be paid. But as far as right now, we know he was hired really quickly after these murders, no less. So we'll see how it all plays out, but I'm sure he'll make a very strong impact as this case moves forward.
And we know that Alan Jackson does not work for free. Court TV correspondent Cody Thomas for us outside the courtroom. Cody, as always, thanks for your insight.
Straight ahead on Today's It Happened.
I'm Joe St. George in Washington. Will the Epstein files be released this week or not? A new federal law says they must be. However, will that actually be the case? We go in depth next.
Well, today as it happened. I'm Holly Furfer. All right, let's continue our walkthrough of the day's top headlines.
Federal appeals court saying President Trump can keep those National Guard troops deployed on the streets of Washington, D.C., at least for now. Before that, a lower court ruled the troops had to be removed. Several thousand have been there for months. Trump can now keep the National Guard troops in the nation's capital until at least late February. Russian President Vladimir Putin is threatening to expand his military campaign in Ukraine if peace talks fail. He said Russia would prefer to achieve its goals through diplomacy, but added if Ukraine refuses dialogue, Russia will achieve what he called the liberation of its historical lands by military means. Those comments coming as President Trump pushes for a diplomatic end to nearly 4 years of fighting. Venezuela firing back at the United States, accusing President Trump of being a warmonger. Yesterday, President Trump called for a total and complete blockade of all oil-sanctioned tankers coming to and leaving Venezuela. Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull is live now on the North Lawn. And Haley, where do things stand at this hour?
Although the president is calling for a blockade of sanctioned oil in and out of Venezuela, and it is a significant move as the administration appears to continue putting pressure on Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro, while Maduro is calling on workers to, quote, say no to piracy. The president announcing on Truth Social on Tuesday night, writing, quote, Venezuela is completely surrounded by the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America. It will only get bigger, and the shock to them will be like nothing they have ever seen before until such time as they return to the United States of America all of the oil, land, and other assets they previously stole from us. You can see part of that statement on your screen right now. Now, it comes after the United States seized a sanctioned tanker earlier in the month, as well as sanctioned 6 shipping companies in Venezuela's oil sector, and has conducted strikes on at least 23 suspected drug boats in the Caribbean based on what officials here have called a counter-drug mission. Now, while the president has been very careful in publicly broadcasting his next moves, he also recently told Politico in an interview that Maduro's days are numbered. Now, this all comes, Del, as in the backdrop, some lawmakers have questioned the administration's moves when it comes to Venezuela and their larger anti-drug campaign, particularly over a boat strike in September that involved multiple strikes reportedly after survivors were seen. Now, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has declined to publicly release that video, as some Democratic senators today have sought a vote on legislation that would compel it. But certainly the call for a blockade of oil in and out of Venezuela, a significant move from the White House, Del.
Tonight's Powerball drawing will once again be one for the record books. The jackpot now standing at about $1.25 billion. If you are lucky enough to win, you could take home the lump sum of $572 million or get an annual payment. Tickets are $2. The drawing is set for 10:59 p.m. Eastern Time.
What will the Department of Justice do? A new federal law says that all Epstein-related files must be released by this Friday, but the law also allows for some exceptions. So will this week produce any new news or not? It's unclear.
President Donald Trump signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act into law on November 19th. That started a 30-day clock for the Department of Justice to release the files. The deadline for release is this Friday. If you read the text of the law, it states it's an act to require the Attorney General to release all documents and records in possession of the Department of Justice relating to Jeffrey Epstein. However, if you read the law even further, you realize some files can still be withheld. While it states, quote, no record shall be withheld, delayed, or redacted on the basis of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity, it also says there are permitted withholdings if they, quote, contain personally identifiable information of victims or victims' personal and medical files, if the files depict or contain child sexual abuse materials, or would jeopardize an active federal investigation or ongoing prosecution. While Attorney General Pam Bondi has said the Department of Justice, quote, will follow the law, many Democrats in Washington believe officials may claim some exemptions incorrectly. On Tuesday, Democrats threatened to hold the Trump administration accountable.
If they abuse narrow exemptions to hide the truth, we will know. And there will be serious legal and political consequences.
The Department of Justice isn't the only government agency releasing new Epstein documents. In recent days, Democrats on the House Oversight Committee released new photographs showing celebrities, as well as President Donald Trump and former President Bill Clinton, in photographs with Epstein. The Oversight Committee has been conducting its own investigation on Epstein for months. The committee has given former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton dates in January to sit for a deposition and have threatened to hold them in contempt if they do not appear. The Clintons have long denied any wrongdoing, as has President Donald Trump, who said any new photo of him and Jeffrey Epstein is no big deal.
I mean, everybody knew this man. He was all over Palm Beach. He has photos with everybody. I mean, almost there are hundreds and hundreds of people that have photos with him, so that's no big deal.
Joe St. George, Scripps News Group, Washington.
Coming up on Today As It Happened.
You come to the stadium to watch the players on the field, but what happens when someone gets knocked off their feet on the sidelines? I'm Lori Jane Leha. Our investigation is ahead.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened, Scripps News end-of-day snapshot of our biggest stories. So let's pick up right where we left off.
College bowl season is here. Tough tackles on the field and perhaps outside the lines as well. Scripps News has been investigating what happens on the sidelines when someone gets knocked off their feet, their bell rung. Our senior national investigative correspondent, Lori Jane Leha, joins us now with an update on her investigation into sideline injuries. And Lori Jane, last season, the Scripps News investigative team took a look at every NFL game. You found close to 90 people knocked down, some suffering serious injuries. This time you're taking a look at the sidelines of college games. What did you find?
Well, Del, we're finding similar things: broken bones, a concussion, and unfortunately, even one person who died weeks after being injured while working on a sideline.
We're at the University of Alabama homecoming day, homecoming parade.
This is the hype college football fans relish.
So I'm getting ready for today's game.
And for Kirby Michaels,
got to be down there in a couple of hours.
The feeling on the field is no different.
What's the atmosphere like?
You got bands playing, you've got the football players, you got equipment smashing, you got coaches yelling, you got players yelling, celebrating.
Kirby works on the sideline at University of Alabama football games as an official for the Southeastern College Football Conference, the SEC.
My job is walking around with a clipboard, documenting every penalty flag that's thrown in the game, whether it's accepted or not.
After working more than a decade, this was the season Kirby planned to take it easy because of a health concern.
And I had a kidney transplant in June of this year, 2025. So I've been purposely staying behind the line of scrimmage.
His doctors told him to avoid falls, but during a University of Alabama game in October, he found himself standing in the wrong place at the wrong time.
I mean, he's right here just off the sideline in front of me, and he's a little airborne, he's got the ball, and he's coming right at me.
So you had no time?
No, I started backing up.
This is the collision captured on university cameras when a player plowed into him, knocking him off his feet. Kirby's kidney is okay, but he says he suffered a concussion and broke his wrist.
I wished I would have done more of a turn and let him go by me instead of backing up. That usually works a lot better.
Is that something you practice?
Yeah.
The pivot, you practice that to prepare?
Believe it or not, yes. Yes, you do.
Just a few weeks earlier, in fact, Kirby says he and his crew had talked about their safety after they learned the consequences of a sideline collision could be fatal following a Florida A&M University game in September. Scripps News obtained this video from the school showing the moment when a player rolled into Florida Highway Patrol Trooper Craig Gaines, who was working as a security guard for the football coach on the sideline. The impact broke Gaines's leg, and less than 2 weeks later, he died. An autopsy obtained by Scripps News shows the cause of death was a pulmonary embolism, with the leg fracture listed as a contributing condition.
He said, I saw the two players coming toward me, and so I tried to get out of the way, but I couldn't get out of the way in time.
Johnny Niles is Trooper Gaines's mother.
He loved what he's doing. Yeah. He loved what he was doing.
Given the line of work that he's in and how dangerous it is and the types of situations he might encounter, did you ever think on the sideline of a football game is where he might be at risk?
No, I don't think anybody under any circumstances would actually think that a person would be injured on the sideline.
But a Scripps News investigation found sideline collisions in college games are more common than one might think. In September, the then head coach of LSU got knocked down during a game against Florida. And in November, a woman took a big hit far off the sidelines during a Miami-Virginia Tech game. Our team found at least 20 people knocked off their feet during college games the same week of Kirby's hit, after we analyzed footage from 30 games played during that time. That includes players, referees, and staff, as well as 2 sideline reporters, one taken down alongside NFL Hall of Famer Michael Irvin.
It seems like this is something that we should maybe talk about or think about moving forward.
Kia Keone played quarterback this season at the University of Northern Colorado, and he's a new member of an NCAA Oversight Committee, a group that has the authority to consider new rules to impact safety. He says this season he observed a sideline hit during one of his games when a woman was knocked off her feet. And after Scripps News reached out to him, he says he started thinking more about the issue.
It's important because we want to play the game with as limited injuries as possible, and whether people playing or people spectating, we want to have a safe game.
NCAA football rules designate specific boundaries outside the sidelines where people can stand. Schools and conferences, however, can impose additional safety rules of their own or recommend changes to the NCAA. Scripps News sent surveys to the 23 football conferences in both the NCAA Football Bowl subdivision and the Football Championship subdivision, not including independent schools. We asked about future efforts to improve sideline safety. Fewer than half responded, but we learned the issue is on the minds of some conferences. The Mountain West Conference, for example, said it already extends a designated boundary called a limit line by an additional 3 feet. The Big Sky Conference said it would use new information and data for future decisions on sideline safety. And others said they would work to maintain a safe and positive game day environment, review national trends, and make this a topic of discussion in the near future. Kirby Michaels has a more specific idea for improved safety.
If had to, probably my job could be done from the press box. I mean, I wouldn't have to be on that sideline.
Would you be okay with that?
Sure. Don't get me wrong, I love being down there and I love being part of the atmosphere. But if I was to move up there to keep doing the same work, I'd do it.
For now, he's enjoying as many games as he can, working hard on the sideline while doing his best to stay out of the way.
Have a great game.
And I have to add, of course, Kirby would prefer to keep his job on the sidelines because he loves it so much, and he knows any changes would likely not be popular among all of the people who are permitted to stand on the sideline, Del.
Lori Jane, I am so glad you have done this story. I have watched 2 professional football games on the sidelines, and I have told people before I will not stand on the sidelines again. It is violent. Last season, during your NFL investigation, you looked at every single game with the team. Why didn't you watch all the college games for this story?
Well, we watched all of the college games so that we could find whether there were hits happening like what was happening in the NFL. But I will say there have been a few prominent hits this season in the NFL, too, including another security guard who was knocked off his feet. He had his back to the game. And that's something, Del, that we reported on last year, too, when a Florida Highway Patrol auxiliary trooper broke his ankle because he had his back to the game, and he got clobbered outside the end zone. I just want to add, too, that we also saw the former CEO of the Raiders, Amy Trask. She weighed in on this year. She posted on X earlier this season that the sidelines are too crowded in the NFL. And she has suggested that someone like a get-back coach to help players and coaches, basically everyone, do exactly that, get back on the sidelines, might be helpful to keep everyone safer, both in the NFL and in college football, Del.
I don't think people know how big these players are and how fast they are moving. Scripps News senior national investigative correspondent Laura Jane Gliha. Laura Jane, as always, we thank you.
Coming up on Today As It Happened, healthcare costs will spike for millions of Americans soon unless Congress takes action on Affordable Care Act subsidies. Stay with us for congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed's reporting from Capitol Hill as lawmakers work to find common ground. That's after the break. Thanks for joining us again on Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer here with your daily look at the day's biggest stories.
President Trump on hand for the solemn, dignified transfer of 2 members of the Iowa National Guard today at Dover Air Force Base. It happened in Delaware. Both of the soldiers were killed in the Syrian desert over the weekend. They have been identified as 25-year-old Sergeant Edgar Brian Torres Tovar and 29-year-old Sergeant William Nathaniel Howard. A civilian working as an interpreter was also killed, the Pentagon saying an ISIS gunman ambushed all 3. A major defeat today for House Speaker Mike Johnson. 4 Republicans breaking ranks with the leadership to try and prevent a healthcare spike for millions of Americans, joining a Democratic-led petition to force a House vote to extend subsidies for Obamacare for 3 years. Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed has been tracking the story on Capitol Hill all day long, and this is seen as a stunning move and a major setback for the Speaker. What is the latest at this hour?
Certainly, well, this move will require that Speaker Johnson puts up an extension to these Affordable Care Act tax credits for 3 years within the next 7 legislative days. And the fact that that is something that Democrats were able to get with the support of just 4 Republicans certainly hurts Speaker Johnson in the short term in his control of the House floor and controlling what bills get a vote. But in some ways, Del, this mirrors exactly what happened over here on the Senate side of the Capitol just last week, where 4 Republicans joined all Democrats in voting to extend those expiring Affordable Care Act subsidies for another 3 years. And ultimately, there's a whole lot of lawmakers who don't necessarily like that that is the options that they're being presented with, but at the same time want to extend those subsidies, not only because of the political vulnerability here going into the 2026 midterm elections, but also the fact that if the subsidies do expire as they're scheduled to at the end of the year, that it could mean much higher premiums, much higher costs for the American people, which obviously is something that a lot of Democrats and some Republicans are really looking to avoid, especially when it comes to health care. I caught up with Senator Josh Hawley a short time ago, one of the 4 Republicans in the Senate who crossed party lines to support that 3-year extension last week. Take a listen. The discharge petition in the House of Representatives just apparently succeeded. Okay. Speaker Johnson will have to schedule a vote in the next 7 legislative days. Do you think if that passes the House, comes back over here, that a 3-year extension now looks more likely if the House passes it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, hopefully it would be the basis for bipartisan negotiations to actually get somewhere on premiums.
Do you think that Republican leadership is not acting when they should be acting on this? Are you worried that you're walking into something in 2026 that could really hurt Republicans?
Oh, I'm not worried about Republicans. I'm worried about working people. I'm worried about the fact that in Missouri, 500,000 people buy their private insurance on the exchange, and many of those folks are going to see huge increases. This is why I voted to do something on premiums, and we have to do something.
In the last couple of moments, we also caught up with Senator Lindsey Graham, the Republican from South Carolina, a close ally of President Donald Trump, who was just at the White House and said he believes the White House wants these negotiations on Capitol Hill behind closed doors to continue as lawmakers look for some way to reduce costs. He also said, though, given the short time that we have here on Capitol Hill before lawmakers are scheduled to head home for the winter recess, that it seems more likely that this is something that will be addressed if there is a bipartisan solution to be had in 2026, not at the very end of this year, the tail end of this year, before these subsidies expire as they're expected to on December 31st. So, Del, for everyone who was looking for that 11th hour solution, just looking more and more unlikely with each passing hour.
Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed for us live on Capitol Hill. Nate, as always, we thank you very much.
Straight ahead on Today's It Happened.
Frustration mounting as the manhunt for the Brown University shooter continues. I'm Maura Barrett. Coming up, what law enforcement says about why there aren't better images of a potential suspect.
You're watching Today's It Happened, Scripps News recap of the day's biggest events. So let's dive right in.
Concern and anxiety growing in Providence, Rhode Island, including the area at Brown University. It's now been more than 4 days since that gunman opened fire inside the engineering building on the campus. In the last hour, though, we've received yet another photo, an enhanced photo this time, of the individual that police say they would like to speak to, a person of interest. You'll see it on your screen. And now there are new questions about video surveillance on the campus. Let's bring in our Scripps News business and tech correspondent, Mara Barrett. And Mara, is law enforcement any closer to breaking this case open?
Well, Del, Brown University students and residents in the nearby area are understandably scared and frustrated because this manhunt, as you mentioned, is continuing. Right now, investigators seem to have more questions than answers and are continuing to ask the public for help to crack this case, with new information being released in just the last hour.
Anxiety growing around Brown University's campus, with the shooter who killed 2 people and injured others there on Saturday still at large.
It's pretty anxiety-inducing, I would say, for sure.
I feel like there's not necessarily a way to feel safe. I mean, you really never know what that person could still be here.
Law enforcement still asking the public for help identifying a person of interest, shown here, and on Wednesday asking for help identifying another person, pictured here, who they say was in the proximity of the person of interest. They're encouraging people in the area to review at-home or car camera systems that may have footage that could help. But now, frustration over the investigation mounting, with many questions still unanswered.
There is no information that the investigative team has about motive. Zero.
And there are growing questions about surveillance in the area of the shooting.
How does a multi-million-dollar school not have a bunch of cameras in the hallway?
President Trump even weighing in, questioning the lack of security cameras. Officials say there are about 1,200 cameras on school grounds, but the building where the shooting occurred was an older one with fewer cameras and was on the edge of campus, so the shooter may have retreated into a residential area.
There's no footage that depicts this individual that would be useful in identifying him that we have not released to you.
Law enforcement continuing to work around the clock, and outside experts emphasize this process takes time.
We all want these things solved overnight, like on, television, but that's not always the case. This case will be solved, but I think they're right on track now.
Now, in addition to releasing that photo of the person, quote, in proximity of the shooter, law enforcement says that they've interviewed a number of students who were in the building during the shooting. They're still working to speak with other potential witnesses. They say officials also, just in the last hour, releasing a map where they've tracked the whereabouts of the gunman and trying to get a sense of before, during, and after the shooting. I will say the law enforcement and officials did just begin their press conference with the latest updates, so I'll let you and our viewers listen in to that, Del.
Everybody, welcome back to our daily briefing. I want to start by just acknowledging how the residents of Providence and the students and campus community at Brown are still feeling restless and eager for an arrest, and we understand and share that feeling. We are also eager for an arrest. The investigation is well underway, and we'll hear an update in just a second from Colonel Perez and Attorney General Noronha. But I want to reemphasize that in the Providence community and with the governor's help, really in the broader Providence community, we have tightened security and we have neighbors looking out for one another, and we will get through this. I know our city, and we are a resilient community, and we are a city that will support one another as we move forward in this scary time. Just because you're feeling unsafe doesn't mean that that's invalid. We know that that's real, but we are doing everything we can to both advance this investigation, but also to provide the support necessary as we move forward and take the first steps together that we need to, as a city, to start to recognize that kids need to go to school and people need to go to work, and we appreciate the courage and sometimes even tentative steps forward that we're taking as we start to move forward as a community.
So we have released this enhanced photo earlier today, and I want to be clear that this is a person that we would like to speak with. We truly believe, based on the video footage that we have been watching for a few days, that may have relevant information to the investigation. So we're asking the public that you can help us identify who this individual is, as well as the individual themselves sees their picture, to please contact the police department. As far as one thing that I want to mention, I want to urge you, the public, not to rely on or circulate AI generated images that are currently being shared on social media, as they're not verified or credible. As well, the updates and information that you're getting will be provided exclusively through this department's official channels. I want to make sure that we make that happen, and please notify the public to make sure that that occurs. I would also like to clarify and show a map. Please, if you can play the map. So the map here that you see is actually a map of the area that we have been intensively walking on those streets, canvassing the area. So as you see the blue image, yesterday I mentioned that we need the public's assistance to check their camera systems or any sort of video that you may have that could be helpful to us, that you, as you're watching it or as you're reviewing it, you feel there may be something that we can use, please notify us. And if you need any help with that, viewing those videos, please also call us. We can come over and help you. The green area, that's color, that's when we have confirmed where the subject was prior to the shooting. The red areas, we have also confirmed that that's the immediate area where he left after the shooting. And so this is the map that actually we have so far. We've walked it all. We're still actively investigating, and we're still actively having agents, Providence police officers, members of the state police. There is about 9 federal agencies that are assisting us with this investigation, adding the state police as well as the Providence police and other municipalities. Again, I would like to reiterate, if you have any tips, please call the 272-3121 or the FBI link at fbi.gov/Brown University shooting. Thank you.
First, I want to just take a moment to recognize and honor the memory of Ella Cook and Muhammad Aziz Umarzakov, who are the 2 deceased victims from this tragedy, and update you on the status of the survivors. Yesterday, we mentioned that 1 individual had been discharged. I'm happy to report that another individual has been discharged today. That leaves 1 survivor in critical but stable condition and 5 in stable conditions.
Thanks for spending part of your evening with us here at Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. Have a wonderful Wednesday night.